Okay, good evening, everyone. This is another Monday evening short talk and Q&A on the Clear Mountain Monastery YouTube channel, also on the Buddhist Insights YouTube channel and Facebook. It's good to see people tuning in. If people listen to the talk that I gave yesterday morning, it was on abandoning by tolerating. And that talk yesterday and the talk this evening are both on a series of different types of abandoning, basically different tools that the Buddha gave us to get rid of unhelpful qualities. In that talk yesterday, abandoning by tolerating, that was given here where I am now, which is Empty Cloud Monastery in West Orange, New Jersey, staying with Bhante Sudaso and Ayasoma. I'm having a very nice time. But yesterday was family day. So as I was giving the talk, which had already been discussed to be on abandoning by tolerating, there were some kids in the audience. So it was a very different type of talk. There was, many more jokes. And it was aimed at people who were about 11 years old. So if you endured through the abandoning by tolerating talk, I admire you and your persistence. So this evening we'll be talking about another way, another tool, another skill in our tool bag. So it would be great. These Monday evening talks are theoretically supposed to focus around Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, then feel free to put them in the chat box at any time, and I'll address those fairly shortly. But in past weeks, there haven't been questions immediately, so have talked a little bit about another aspect of the sutta that we're discussing. So that's how I'll begin tonight, which is abandoning by destroying. So that is the overarching topic for tonight's short talk. And you can also consider that when you're formulating questions. So as Buddhism comes to America, it really mixes with a lot of a lot of currents which are in line with Dhamma, and some currents which are partially in line with Dhamma and partially going in a different direction, and certain other currents which are totally or really not in line with Dhamma. And it's the intermediate class there, where some of these views are in line with Dhamma and some of them are not in line with the Buddhist teaching as it appears in the Pali Canon. And those are really kind of fascinating to tease out. So we'll give attention to those type of things, just to get our minds more around what is it that the Buddha of the Pali Canon is actually teaching, because it might be in line with what we think coming from a Western mindset, and maybe it isn't, or maybe it partially is and partially isn't. So yesterday, as I mentioned, this talk on tolerance. What is tolerance in Buddhism? And the answer is tolerance as we speak of it in America, like tolerating other, all races and genders and sexual orientations. That's just a total given. Like the Buddha, there's no thought about discrimination in terms of the Dhamma as the Buddha saw it. When the Buddha talks about abandoning by tolerating, or tolerance in Buddhism, he's speaking about tolerating the things we can't control. So we can't control other people's speech. So whether people speak to us in a way which is beneficial or accurate or gentle or timely or with loving kindness, or the opposites of those, we just have to tolerate those to some degree, especially if we're in a position where we can't we can't respond, or it's not the right time, or to some degree there's, for all of us, a measure of tolerance with regards to other people's speech, and also with regards to internal states of dukkha, or yeah, or suffering, or uncomfort. And but that's not our only tool. Tolerance is not the only medication that we've got in our armamentarium. The Buddha gave us all sorts of things, so we don't have to tolerate everything. And what don't we tolerate? What do we actually destroy? What do we actively take an interest in? Correcting, or as we'll use this word, vinodanam, vinodeti. This is the Pali word which Ajahn Thanissaro, Ajahn Jeff teaches as, or translates as, to destroying. So these are the defilements which we relate to by destroying them. So we don't tolerate these things, which I'm about to mention. We destroy them. Or other translations for vinodeti include dispelling, or removing, or pushing away, rejecting. So yeah, what are these things? So what did the Buddha say? What did the Buddha point to as things which we do have a measure of control of and shouldn't just tolerate, shouldn't just say, oh, the world is like this, I'm like this, I just need to accept it. No. What are the things that we can deal with by destroying or dispelling or pushing away? The Buddha gives 4 in the Sabbasava Sutta, which we're going over. And those are thoughts of sensuality, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harming, and any other unwholesome Dhamma or unwholesome mental state which arise. These internal qualities are the things which we can deal with by, strong language, but destroying or dispelling or removing. So that's kind of fascinating. Yeah, the Buddha sometimes in modern Buddhist circles, or in Buddhist modernism, or in humanistic Buddhism or romantic Buddhism, you have this idea that you just tolerate everything, both external and internal. You just go with the flow. That's the Buddha's one injunction: just go with the flow. But yeah, I'll read the excerpt from this sutta which deals about this. So, what are the effluents, the asavas, the mental corruptions, the kind of dirty, gross aspects of the mind, which are to be abandoned by vinodanam, by destroying, by dispelling, by removing? There's the case where a practitioner, reflecting appropriately, does not tolerate an arisen thought of sensuality, an arisen thought of ill will, an arisen thought of harming, or any other arisen unwholesome state. They abandon it, they destroy it, they dispel it, and they wipe it out of existence. So this is strong language, almost the exact opposite of what we were talking about yesterday, is tolerance. Literally, it is the opposite. So the asavas to be abandoned by tolerating, the Pali is adivasana, ati asava, adivasana, pahatabang. There are these asavas, these outflows, these taints to be removed by enduring or tolerating. Adivasana, vas is to live with, and adi is to really live into. So you endure these things. But in this way of removing the asavas is you nadivasati, you do not tolerate them. Nadivas, na means not, adivaseti, the same word from we saw yesterday in tolerating. We don't tolerate these mental states. In fact, we abandon them, we destroy them, we dispel them, and we wipe them out of existence. People who are new to Buddhism, or who have only heard about Buddhism through Western sources, which kind of eschew this kind of active or almost heroic aspect of mental training, might hear these injunctions to dispel and remove and destroy mental states and think, oh, that's not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha was all about peace, and you don't want to be attacking parts of your consciousness. You don't want to be attacking parts of your mind. And I think there's some truth to that. So we want to be dealing with our minds skillfully. Attacking is a strong word, and the Buddha doesn't use attack, doesn't use beat or flog. You shouldn't flog these mind states out of existence, or self-castigate. There's no allowance for monks to literally self-flagellate, to take long ropes or chains or beat themselves, as happens in other monastic traditions. There's none of that. We're not into that. But we can relate in this way, which is more active. When we see these thoughts arise, then abandoning them and dispelling them and wiping them out of existence is something which the Buddha said is not only possible, but is a good thing to do. And is within our purview. It's within the realm of possibility and wholesome regarding and pushing of the mind. So that's a general introduction, and I might speak a bit more on this general principle, but maybe come back to take Q&A, since that's the purported thing which we do on Mondays. So here's a question. So Ajahn Kovilo, you gave us a really intriguing analogy when comparing Burmese Vipassana with the Thai forest tradition, boxing versus MMA. It says it's continued. Here is the second part. Perhaps for a meditator following the Burmese tradition, you could give us some hints for adding to our arsenal, which still remains generally on course, of observing impermanence of sensation. This is referring to a statement which is actually a quote which I had heard from one of my teachers, Ajahn Sanyamo, wonderful, beautiful monk, about the difference between, I was talking to him about coming from the Goenka tradition, which is very technique-based. So you get a very, very clear technique, two or three very specific techniques. Breath meditation on the breath as it comes in, just in this little triangle right here, as you can experience it there. Noting sensations from the top of the head down to the soles of the feet, and loving kindness meditation. So my teacher Ajahn Sanyamo said that this is kind of like formal boxing, where there are very, very clear rules. You can't kick, you can't bite, you can't basically throw people to the ground and do all this type of grappling moves. There are very clear constraints, and similarly with whether it's the Vipassana is taught in the Goenka tradition, or the Samatha jhanas taught in the Pa-Auk tradition, or the noting techniques taught in the Mahasi tradition, or really any other. Those are all just three Burmese related lineages, but it has nothing to do with the country. It's really any school or modality which focuses on one or two specific techniques and suggests really eschewing, not paying attention to, or mixing techniques. So that's a big thing in some of these traditions. There's a simile. If you want to find gold, if you just dig down right here, today you dig all day, and then you decide tomorrow, I'm going to dig over there. I didn't find any gold today down here, so I'm going to dig over there tomorrow. And then the next day you dig somewhere else, and the following day you dig somewhere else. And if you just keep doing this is a desultory way of practicing. You're practicing a little bit here, a little bit there, and if you do that, then you'll never go deep enough to get to the gold. And a good question to ask yourself is, we're in West Orange, New Jersey. Is there actually any gold in the ground here? That's a bit of a flippant reply, but Yeah, that's one take on it, is you just take your one technique and hone in on it. You've got these rules, keep to them. Yeah. Um, but other techniques, say, as Ajahn Chah would teach, basically experiment. The mind is more variegated than the whole animal kingdom. You've got alligator mind states and monkey mind states and uh, apish mind states and butterfly mind states, all these different things. So you have to relate to them differently. So the Buddha and Ajahn Chah would say, practice with different techniques, experiment. So that's the MMA, or the kind of mixed martial arts way of approach. You can throw somebody on the ground, you can kick them in the face, you can do a jumping side kick, roundhouse, grapple them on the ground and squeeze them between your legs, do whatever it takes. That's the no holds barred approach, is how my teacher was describing the Ajahn Chah tradition. And I don't say this to denigrate any of these Burmese lineages that I mentioned, because I think they raise a really good point. Yeah, our life is only so long, and yeah, it's really, really important to become skilled at meditation, and having one technique that you focus on, yeah, can be a great life practice if that works for you. So yeah, the question which is raised is specifically about these boxing techniques. These what we're thinking of as Burmese specific techniques. Following the Burmese tradition, could you give us some hints on adding to our arsenal, which still remains generally on course, of observing impermanence of sensation? So yes, yeah. So if we think of the Goenka technique, which is being referred to, sensations, noticing anicca, the impermanence, any sensation which arises, doesn't matter what it is, tingling, heat, pressure, from the top of the head down to the soles of the feet, remaining equanimous with whatever comes up, and noting its impermanence, anicca, anicca, anicca. Yeah. On paper, it's a fairly constrained technique. You can basically buy, 3 or 4 books, or really even just one book, and have the whole of that technique as it's described on paper. But when you live it, yeah, it becomes, yeah, you really have to just flesh it out. You have to make it work for you, and there are ways to do that. So yeah, even if you're just a boxer, you've got your side jabs and you've got your front punches. Actually, anybody who's a boxer can see I don't know anything about boxing. I would just get totally knocked out if I tried to punch somebody like that. But yeah, there are a range of techniques even within this one technique. So although some meditation teachers do suggest not using a mantra, you can experiment with that, like anicca, impermanence. Just as you notice the tingling at the top of your head, impermanence, this is changing. You notice the tension around your eyes, anicca, changing. Any stress around your mouth, changing, anicca. Your shoulders, you feel the touch of your clothes. You can feel the blood rushing through your veins in your wrist. Anicca, impermanence. So that's one thing you can experiment with if you're up for it, is using a mantra just to kind of bring you back on track. And I don't think this is cheating. There are different ways to use a mantra. Some teachers that we're discussing will very specifically say, don't use a mantra. They'll kind of make fun of it, saying, what is this, sectarian, Rama Lama Ding Dong, Rama Lama Ding Dong, this mantra practice. It has nothing to do with the Buddha's teaching. So But there are different ways to use a mantra, and the mind is going to be thinking anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, even in the first jhana, there's still vitaka, there's still directed thought. So, yeah, you don't have to use a mantra or this anicca, impermanence, as just a constant lathering over your mental experiments, anicca, 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 this kind of like wiping away, or almost, I don't want to see it just put this sticker on anicca, impermanence, impermanence. That's a really unskillful way to use a mantra, which people do, and that is rightly criticized. But you can also just use it as just like a dye. So you've got a clear vat of water, and you've got a little dropper with, say, blue or green or red or any other kind of colored dye in it, and you drop just one drop into this clear basin of water, and just one drop, you drop it in, and the color spreads through the whole of the container of water. And similarly, you're sitting, observing anicca, impermanence, as it is in the body, and then you can just drop that word in, anicca, impermanence. And that can bring you back on track. So, yeah, you could use a full-blown mantra, anicca, 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 or just an occasional, okay, the mind is starting to go elsewhere. My attention has left the body, has left sensations, gone somewhere else, anicca. This is impermanent. Other ways that you can experiment are, say, with, how do you scan your body? For myself, although teachings would say you go from the top of the head down to the soles of the feet, and then the soles of the feet back up to the top of the head. But for me, I found, for whatever reason, and I won't even try to speculate, I just didn't like it. It would actually give me a headache when I scanned from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. So basically, I would just like a waterfall, just let gravity from the soles of the feet to the top of the head, and then jump, right back to the top of the head, down to the soles of the feet, and scan in that way. Other realms you can experiment with include, the realm of speed. How fast do you scan? So that's just a few ideas to increase your boxing skill prowess. Okay. Another question. Good evening. So Ajahn Kovilo, aversion seems like a seductive partner of destroying. Is aversion always to be avoided? Destroying with equanimity instead? Very good point. Very good point. The English phraseology, destroying and pushing away, they're just mixed up almost inherently with this aversive energy. Like, how can you destroy anything without aversion? It's like, I've got this sledgehammer, and to some extent, I've got to be, putting, or at least I have been used to using the sledgehammer with, this aversive energy. And I think when you say aversion here, I think what might be useful is to actually put that rather than kind of collating it under this aspect of passion or kamma vitaka, thoughts of sensuality. Put it under the umbrella of vyapada vitaka, so thoughts of ill will. So aversion is, it's fascinating. I'll read that part of the sutra again. So there's the case where a meditator, reflecting appropriately, doesn't tolerate an arisen thought of ill will. Doesn't tolerate an arisen thought of ill will. They abandon it. They destroy it. They dispel it. They wipe it out of existence. Isn't that fascinating? Like, I mean, it almost, reading that, you might think, how can you fight aversion with aversion? Because that's what the translation might suggest. But yeah, you need to figure out a way to relate to ill will, to abandon, to vinodeti, to dispel thoughts of ill will in a way which is not aversive. Because yeah, you can't fight fire with fire. You can't fight excrement with excrement. Poorly mixed metaphor, but yeah, destroying with equanimity. Yeah, I think you're onto it. Yeah, dealing with ill will and aversion in a way which is equanimous. Like, first thing to do is to note it. Yeah, ill will, yeah, aversive mind states, whether it's directed towards a person. God, what a jerk! What a total loser! You can note as a first step. Yeah, ill will, or whether it's internal. God, this is extremely painful. I just wish this headache would go away, this stomach ache. I don't want it. I didn't do anything to deserve it. May it go away. As you can see, that's all mixed up with aversion. But yeah, equanimity, and noting it, ill will, whether internal or external. And yeah, that goes some way to addressing it. But then, yeah, how you go about destroying and dispelling really is a matter of your own skill. You have to pick up skills to do that. So yeah, how can you think in a way which helps you abandon ill will? Yeah, you can think of the good qualities. If it's a family member, obviously you didn't marry that person because they were a total bad person. You have seen in the past that this person has goodwill. You didn't, when these kids were babies, they weren't just total bundles of unbeautiful and repellent, noxious baby dukkha. They did cute stuff. And so focusing on that and figuring out how to focus and pay attention to different things, that's skill in framing your existence. So yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. To ask yourself, yeah, how can I deal with ill will? How can I destroy my thoughts of ill will? How can I dispel and abandon and remove and push away my thoughts of ill will without adding to the aversion? And sometimes you might come to a place when your only tool is equanimity. Yeah, you're like, honestly, I'm experiencing this pain. I hate this person so much. The mental emotion is so strong. No other tool other than equanimity seems possible. So yeah, just figuring out equanimity. How can I sit here? How can I lay down? Honestly, equanimity is easier in the lying down posture if you're able to do that. And it's easier to let your body relax when you're lying down. So if you have strong ill will coming up and you can lie down, then try that, because ill will is intimately bound up with, it's in your muscles. The all sorts of hormones have entered into your bloodstream, and your whole body becomes tense with ill will. And yeah, when you can let that go, when you can just lie down and let gravity just totally relax your muscles, then it becomes easier to deal with the mental state. Hope that's helpful. Another question? So, Bhante Kovilo, I had read in some sutta translations one should, quote, obliterate all unwholesome roots of greed, hatred, and delusion, or uproot all defilements. Has this been correctly translated? I believe what you've read is translating this word vinodeti. Vi is a prefix, a Pali prefix, which means it has several meanings, but one of them is just an intensifier. And the root for this word is nud. So vinudeti, nudeti, is a Pali word which means to reject or to push away or to dispel. So to really dispel is vitnudeti, vitnodeti. Vinodanam is the noun, so dispelling or removing. And yeah, the Pali for this whole phrase, which Ajahn Jeff translates it as you abandon it, you destroy it, you dispel it, you wipe it out of existence. And it here is referring to unwholesome roots of greed, anger, and delusion. So you destroy them, you abandon them. The Pali is Ida bhikkhave bhikkhu patisankayuniso upananang kama vitakang, etc. Nadi vaseti, pajahati, vinodeti, vyanti karoti, anubhavam gameti. So nadi vaseti, as we mentioned, na adivaseti, you do not tolerate them. So earlier in the sutta, we have the things which are to be abandoned by tolerating. That's other people, things that you can't control. But here, it's mental states, which you can control to some degree. But in the degree to which you can, you nadivaseti, you don't tolerate them. Pajahati, so you abandon them. Vinodeti is the word we're talking about in question. You dispel or remove or destroy or vyanti karoti, you make them, you work for their non-being, or anubhavam gameti, you wipe them out of existence. You wipe them out of existence. Anubhavam gameti. So I think that might be also either your translator is translating vinodeti or anubhavam gameti as obliterates. And obliterate, people learn some Pali. English words just are so mixed up. Obliterate, like, I mean, that's almost like nuke. You want to like nuke your mind states. I mean, that's, fortunately, I haven't ever seen, a Pali translator suggesting that we should nuke our ill will or compassion, but obliterate comes pretty close, or decimate. I've never seen that. But again, obliterate comes pretty close to decimating and nuking. It's just degrees. But this anubhavam gameti, the Pali is more neutral. So bhavam is just existence, and unabhavam is so not existing. Gameti, to gum, to move. The e makes it causative. You cause to make or cause to go to non-existence. So it's not, the Pali isn't, it's a fairly like neutral injunction. It is an injunction. The Buddha said that you should make these go to non-existence, but it doesn't have the connotations of, totally like, sending napalm over your unhelpful mental states, which obliteration does. So thank you. Good question. Okay, here's another good question. I really like this question. So Bhante, what do you think about RAIN, R-A-I-N, the way Tara Brach does for her approach? So I think it's a beautiful technique. I love it. So RAIN is an acronym which stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and maybe nurture. Please someone correct me if I got that N wrong. But yeah, that's a beautiful technique, and it's definitely, someone used a phrase earlier as these different our arsenal. Yeah, so this is definitely a weapon or a tool for our toolkit. Is the RAIN technique, is recognizing, allowing, investigating, and nurturing. And it's beautiful. And honestly, I've been brought to tears, which I'm sure other people have as well, with using that technique. And honestly, that, like, sometimes that's all you can do. Like, sometimes our mind states are just so intractable, so unworkable. Our minds are so unmalleable. that all we can do is just recognize ill will. My mind is just thoroughly filled with sensuality. All I want to do is eat the rest of that cake and then eat the next cake in the fridge. And then basically, I just never want to stop eating. And that the kind of habit energy of that is such that, yeah, all you can do is just recognize it. You can't make it go into non-existence any other way. And so just allowing, yeah, okay, I allow this as a conditional, as a provisional. It's like in Pali Buddhism, there is a goal for our practice, and it's nibbana, and that is the complete overcoming of greed, anger, and delusion. And yeah, that's a goal which is unique even amongst like modern Buddhism, Buddhist modernism, as it appears. Like many ways of psychologizing Buddhism will say, actually, when the Buddha talks about the total removal of greed, anger, delusion, that's just a mistranslation, or he doesn't really mean that. It's not really possible to totally remove these things. All you can do is just figure out a better present moment relationship to them. And that, in my understanding of the Dhamma, that's not a correct understanding of the Buddha's teaching in the Pali Canon. And I think that's a fairly orthodox and reasoned reading of the Pali Canon, that it is possible to totally remove greed, anger, and delusion. But so we take that as our ultimate goal. We are swimming across we're swimming miles, and that is our far goal. That's the island that we're trying to reach. But to get there, we need to have different strokes, and the arms are going to get tired if you just do breaststroke all the time. So maybe this rain technique is like doggy paddling, or just like floating as much as you can on your back, or you've got a kickboard or something. So you just allow. So at the present moment, my butterfly stroke is just not working to go towards the goal. I'm just going to doggy paddle or just float on my back enough to not drown, and just for the present moment, allow this and investigate it and nurture yourself. Thank you very much for bringing that up. And anyone who hasn't practiced with that, I highly recommend listening to talks by Tara Brach, or I think Diana Winston will also teach this rain technique. And I think on Dhamma Seed, there are recordings of Tara Brach doing 30-minute guided meditations with this rain technique. So it's beautiful. Yes. So we have, I thought in was for non-identification. And I think the way that Diana Winston teaches rain is there are two ins. So there's recognizing, allowing, investigating, non-identification, and then I think nurturing. But I could also get that second in wrong. But yeah, non-identification is also a great non-aggressive way of dealing with these things. So yeah, aggression isn't always a skillful way of using our minds. So rain is a much more passive resistance. And passive resistance, I don't use that. I'm not deriding that. It's a totally valid technique. But yeah, non-identification, you can just label that this isn't mine. Although it seems like it's totally overpowered my life and my mind and my thoughts at the moment, it's not me. So so someone writes, and this isn't a question, but I came here to learn to destroy. For some people, this does work. Yeah, and especially I think for people who have a skill or propensity with samadhi. Yeah, so there are ways. It's not necessarily the case that everyone has a inherently complicated relationship with destroying. It might be a very matter-of-fact and even peaceable way that some people relate to their mind. Yeah, I need to destroy my anger, and I can do that. That might work for some people, specifically having a very strong capacity for samadhi. So if someone can just totally hone in on the breath, whether it's on a specific point or the one point being the whole body, if you have strengthened samadhi, it's like a rock, yeah. Or if you don't have a rock, a box of tissues, but rocks are heavier, of course. And with this metaphor, it's like the samadhi is like you've got this grass which is growing in your mind, these thoughts of ill will and craving and harming. And with samadhi, if you have the capacity, you can just totally put it over the grass. Come back to the breath, come back to the breath. I don't care, ill will, doesn't matter, come back to the breath, come back to the breath. And in Western psychology, that might be called avoidance, or maybe someone can help me with the word, but kind of rejecting or internally dismissing or just not paying attention. And I think that's an accurate assessment to some degree. But as a provisional technique, you can use it, and let that not be your only weapon in your arsenal. You want to learn all these other ways. Abandoning by seeing, the 7 types of abandoning spoken of in the Sambhasava Sutta, which we're going over, are abandoning by seeing, abandoning by restraining, abandoning by using, abandoning by tolerating, abandoning by avoiding, destroying, and developing. So 7 of them. And try to get good at all of them. You don't want your only tool to be a sledgehammer, your only weapon to be, this bloody sword. But if it does work for you and doesn't cause you harm, then keep experimenting, but also keep looking to see if it's still not harming you. Okay, and maybe we'll see, this might be coming up to one of the last questions. Ajahn Kovilo, is the technique same for fears and anxiety, or is there another way than destroying? This specific technique is, it does mention other papaka akusala dhamma. So upananang akusalanang papakanang dhammanang. So basically, with any arisen papa, evil, akusala, unwholesome mental states. So fear and anxiety are unhelpful, unwholesome mental states. But you really have to figure out for yourself these are broad brush. Abandoning by destroying is a broad brush. Abandoning by dispelling is a broad brush, broad gauge, wide gauge, overarching technique, which subsumes many ways of practice. And with fears and anxieties, there are sub-techniques which will give the same result, which is the abandoning of that mind state. And so for fears, I mentioned this before, but finding a way to make your fear to be in front of your fear, so that it's pushing you forward rather than letting your fear get in front of you, so it's holding you back. Relaxing the body again. With fears, the shoulders will tense up, so letting your body relax. Investigating to some extent. What is the cause of your fear? Is it legitimate or is it illegitimate? Is it a true thing to be worried about or not? Anxiety is similar in that it does have this kind of body vibratory effect, which mind just spinning out all over the place. But ways to lead to the unabhavangameti, ways to lead to the going towards the non-existence of anxiety, might include, if you're not on the 8 precepts, then you're just on the 5 precepts. Listen to some calming music. If you are in the 8 precepts and have some wiggle room with the way you interpret, not listen to music, listen to some of this Buddhist-ish music, like that metta song by, maybe you know the one I'm talking about. I forget the artist's name, but it's played in all these meditation centers. But it's really calming. I've listened to it before, and listening to calming music, and you can find your techniques for abandoning, your techniques for leading to the non-arising, non-existence of these things anywhere you can find them. So there's whole industries in America for relaxation. And some of their tools are valid. If you're not a monk and you have access to a luxuriant bath, then a bath can, relieve some anxiety. And there's no rule against that if you're a layperson. So maybe there's one more question, but for people who want to sign off now, it's been 45 minutes, and I think that's our general cutoff. I think there is one more question, which I'll address, but for people who want to leave, yes, please feel free to sign off now. Thank you for coming. The word which I was trying to get was repressing. So the repressing by samadhi. I think, is there a place for repression in Buddhism? I think repression in modern psychological circles is a wholly negative term. So maybe we can leave it as a negative term that we don't want to do. But like blocking or temporarily averting one's gaze. Maybe think of it like that. So maybe this can be one of our last questions for anybody who's still around. So good morning, Bhante. Okay, different time zone. After getting the Dhamma Eye, which is what it means to attain stream entry, the first level awakening, and the kamma seed, I'm not sure what that means, through a perfect control of the mind contents, how can one get to abandon totally self-consciousness? So maybe I'll summarize the question as I understand it as, so after one has attained stream entry, how does one abandon, the question is, how does one abandon self-consciousness? I'm trying to think in Pali. So some translations for that might be Sakaya Ditti. So that is maybe more accurately translated as personality view, or the ditti, the view, the belief that the body and oneself are the same, Sakkaya Ditti, personality view. In which case, if that's what the question is about, if having attained stream entry, how do you abandon personality view? They're one and the same thing. So personality view, the abandoning of personality view, Sakkaya Ditti, is one and the same with the attainment of stream entry. So once you attain stream entry, you don't have to do any other work to abandon personality view, Sakkaya Ditti. If what this person means by self-consciousness is the lingering sense of self, like mana. Mana is also translated as conceit or pride, which is only abandoned at arhatship. So if the question is, having abandoned Sakkaya Ditti, personality view with the attainment of stream entry, how does one then go and become an arhat and fully abandon any conceit of self. It's basically the same thing that you did to become a stream enterer. So you can read the Satipatthana Samyutta, which I believe is Samyutta number 45. And it's just got all sorts of techniques for, or it tells you the range of application for practicing the foundations of mindfulness. So you have Anuruddha. People are asking him, Anuruddha, how did you attain steam entry? And he says, oh, by practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. How about once returner and non-returner and arhat? Oh, by practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Well, how did you gain the divine eye and be able to like see beings in other realms? Oh, it was by practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. What about all these other psychic powers? Oh, it's just practicing and developing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So if you've attained stream entry, wonderful. Maybe you should start your own YouTube channel. Yeah, we need more stream enterers in the public eye. But yeah, just keep doing it. Keep practicing Satipatthana, the foundations of mindfulness. So maybe just 2 more questions for those who've stuck around. And then we really will quit in 9 minutes. So, Bhante, then one should use mindfulness in order to recognize and uproot these unwholesome states and practice the wholesome states of mind using noble wisdom and mindfulness. Yeah, that's a good summary. Yeah, use your mindfulness in order to recognize and uproot unwholesome states. So I think when we talk about mindfulness, one definition of mindfulness is that which remembers what is wholesome and unwholesome. So mindfulness does that first part of recognizing what's wholesome and unwholesome. That mindfulness can put a label on, oh, I remember that I don't want to give vent to ill will. I don't want to give free rein to the little piggies of my mind. I don't want to just let my lust and greed and harmful intents just run wild. So those are labels which mindfulness can help to correctly and helpfully assist us. But uprooting is less a factor of mindfulness than it is of energy, of virya. If you wanted to, clearly distinguish those in your mind. And then, so using sati, mindfulness, using virya, energy, and using noble wisdom, that's your path. Keep doing it. Yeah, the Buddha said that the eightfold, each factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, they circle and run 3 states, circle and run around each of the 8 factors of the Eightfold Path. And those are right mindfulness, right effort, and right view. So right view correctly identifies your mind state. Right mindfulness reminds you that you want to either cultivate or abandon that. And right effort actually does the work of cultivating or abandoning. And final question. How can one learn to accept their kamma, including the suffering one goes through? Ask yourself questions. So, to what extent is what you're experiencing past kamma that you can't do anything about? And to what extent is it something that you can do something about? And that's an ongoing investigation for our whole lives. And there, we can, push and incline the mind in certain directions. But then there comes a point when the mind is just no longer trainable. You've reached the limit of how much you can make your sore knee stop being sore. You've reached the limit of how much you can make your migraines go away. You've taken the medication that you need to take, but there's still pain as a remainder. So how do you accept that? It was a bit sad. The punchline for yesterday's teaching about tolerance. So your question kind of points to what the Buddha was suggesting with his advice on tolerance, which was, one tolerates cold, heat, hunger, and thirst, the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, burning, and creeping things, ill-spoken, unwelcome words, and bodily feelings that when they arise are painful, raking, sharp, piercing, and disagreeable, displeasing, and menacing to life. So yeah, the punchline to that, how do you endure? How do you tolerate? How do you accept? How do you be patient? The answer is just be patient, be tolerate and accept. And yeah, it's not a sexy answer, but really that's kind of what you just have to do. And this teaching otthon is a Thai word which everyone coming to, all the Western monks, Western people coming to go and live with Ajahn Chah, who didn't speak Thai, that was one of the first words they learned, just because he said Ajahn Chah would use this word so much. Otthon in itself is it can be a directive, it can be a full sentence in itself, but it basically means endure. So yeah, acceptance, on one level, it's a heart quality. It's not so much, you can think your way into acceptance and endurance and patience, but on some level, like the real acceptance is like a heart thing. You're just like, this is where I am. We've got 3 minutes left. I'll give you one acronym, and maybe I'll talk about this later, but change me patiently. So change is content, humble, accepting, non-ill will, gentle, easygoing, metta, equanimity, and patience. So those are however many, that's like 9 qualities for basically getting better at acceptance. So yeah, just contentment. These are the painful feelings that arise. I can't do anything about it. I'll just be content, accepting, content, humble. This is my lot in life at the moment. I've done what I can. Accepting, non-averse, non-ill will, gentle or grateful, or basically just being soft with yourself. Easygoing. Be easygoing with this. This might not go away very quickly, just letting it take the time it needs to. Metta, loving kindness, equanimity. Change me slowly. Change me slowly. Acceptance. All right, and that's a good way to end the talk. So it's great seeing everyone come out this evening, and I hope everyone has a good evening and a good morning. For those of you who are on a different part of the world, you've got a whole day to practice the Dhamma, and may it be so. I send everyone metta, and may we all grow in Dhamma. Good night.